Hello, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you 6 summer romance recommendations. Books to make your summer just a little bit sexier and just a little bit better. But before we get into it, I have got to share something that I know will make your summer better. The sponsor of today's video, Parade. So Parade makes some of my absolute favorite underwear. I'm always so excited to work with Parade. And since one of my big goals for the rest of this year is kind of growing up and growing in my confidence, I've been trying to level up multiple different areas of my life, including my style and my underwear drawer. Historically, I've stuck with really basic and boring underwear, which makes getting dressed in the morning easier, but not necessarily fun. I wanted to add some colorful, confidence-boosting pieces to my underwear drawer, and like always, Parade came through. I tried a handful of new styles, and I'll be honest, all of them I really enjoyed, but my absolute favorite of the bunch is the high-rise cheeky in silky mesh. The material is so soft on my skin, which makes my sensory issues so happy, and it's made from rescued materials, usually wasted in production processes, and it's spun into really light yarns, which I really appreciate since I try to buy sustainably whenever I can. Now, I'm normally a thong girl. I usually stick with the ultra flattering high-rise thong in the new cotton material, but sometimes I find myself wanting something just a little bit more relaxed. And these ones bring softness and sexiness without bunching under my clothing, which is so important to me. And of course, they're super breathable, which, hello, summer in Texas, it's a must. You can get 50% off site-wide using my code chandler50 or clicking the link in my description down below. You deserve an upgrade to your underwear drawer, and now is absolutely the best time to do it with this 50% off discount, especially since Parade's collections can sell out. So again, you're gonna get a 50% discount if you use my code chandler50 or click the link in the description down below. Thanks again to Parade for sponsoring this portion of today's video. Now let's talk about some other summer fun with my 6 summer romance recommendations. First up, we have Goddess of the Hunt by Tessa Dare, which is the first book that was published by Tessa, and it is probably her smuttiest as well. And that's not exactly why I think this book is incredible, but it does help to add to the appeal of this as a summer romance. Now I'm giving you a historical romance recommendation because inevitably after finishing Bridgerton season 3, you're gonna want something steamy and hot to kind of like fill that void in your life until the next season comes out. So this book is about Lucy and Jeremy. Now Lucy, our heroine at the beginning of the book, is looking to bag herself a husband, but she feels like she needs a little bit of help in the flirting and seduction department so she can bag the guy of her dreams. But she doesn't want to just like try her wiles and her wily ways out on just anyone. She thinks that, you know, she needs some experience before kind of going out into the wild. And who better to help her than her brother's best friend, Jeremy. Now, Jeremy isn't totally on board when Lucy approaches him and is like, hey, will you like teach me your, you know, sexy ways? He's definitely a little bit apprehensive because he's like not into Lucy, or so he thinks, but he feels some sort of like obligation to her because again, it's like, oh, that's my best friend's little sister, and also she is kind of wild and I'm like scared she's going to try to seduce the wrong man. So if I can help her kind of steer her in the right direction, all will be well. Unfortunately, or fortunately, they kind of fall for each other along the way. They realize that their like fake feelings are turning into real love, of course. Not just real love, but sexy feelings as well. Now, admittedly, Lucy and honestly Jeremy at times can be a little bit immature, and I feel like could grate on some readers. So if you're sensitive to that, maybe skip this one. I feel like if you've read any of the Bridgerton books, those characters can be a little annoying too, so I feel like you know what to expect going into something like this. Now, I really like this book, especially compared to some of Tessa Dare's other books, because it has that classic writing that I think makes her books so fun, and yet it doesn't fall into the trope trap, I would say. I love a good trope as much as the next girl, but I do feel like Tessa tends to kind of repeat her tropes in a big way. You've got like the rake and the wallflower, and all of her books that have that particular like trope and or character archetype, I think tend to feel the same. This book doesn't really fall into that. Like the character dynamic between Lucy and Jeremy is something that's unique, which I personally really liked. Again, it was very sexy. I want to say there's like a seduction scene in like a little armoire while they're kind of like hiding during a game of hide and go seek. It's hot. It's a hot, fun time. I just, you know, summer romance, historical romance, you gotta pick it up. It's a good time. Now, the next book that I'm going to recommend is actually a book series. The first one being Truth or Beard by Penny Reed. I feel like the last time I recommended this series, it was for a fall romance recommendation video, but frankly, I could read the series any time of year and I think be very happy and satisfied because these books are so fun to fly through, and I feel like whenever I go on a summer vacation, especially to like the beach, and I'm gonna be there for more than a couple of days, I like to download an entire series and just like fly through it, and the Winston Brothers series is one that you definitely will fly through. So the Winston Brothers are a group of hot, hunky, sometimes bearded men who live in a small town in Tennessee and are looking for a woman. Not in a creepy way. I mean, each man has their own success in love and in romance in their individual books is what I'm trying to say. You've got all kinds of pairings. There's Scrumpy Sunshine, literally everything in between. And I feel like I always gravitate back to the series and always want to recommend it because Penny Reed is one of those authors who is just a master at her craft. You're not going to pick up one of her books and be like, wow, the plotting and the pacing of this book is like weak, or oh, I don't really understand why these characters like each other. She does her homework whenever she is writing a book to make sure that each one is really, really well crafted. For me, if I'm trying to fly through a series, I want to make sure that I'm not getting bored. And again, Penny Reid, like, will not let you get bored. The pairings are always so spot on, so swoony. And I feel like in general, this series just doesn't get the love that it deserves. I feel like I really just don't hear people talking about these books, maybe a few years ago, but definitely not today. And I know a lot of you are looking for small town romance recommendations after flying through Elsie Silver, Lila Sage, and B.K. Borison's backlists. The vibes in the series are a little different from those, but they're no less immaculate, and with incredible characters, I really don't think you can go wrong with this series. Now, I would definitely be remiss if I didn't add one of my favorite books of this year to this list. I read this one back in January, and it has been on my mind ever since. That book is On the Same Page by Haley Cass. This is a friends to lovers female-female romance about Riley and Gianna, but it is so much more rich than just a friends to lovers trope. Essentially, we open up to these two women. I can't remember if they're in their 20s or their 30s, but they've known each other for quite a while, since college. They were college roommates, and now they don't live together, but they are constantly visiting each other's houses. They live in like the same city, and they're constantly lifting each other up. They've got inside jokes. Just from the beginning, you know that these two women are close. They are tight. They are best friends. Immediately love that vibe. I feel like oftentimes when authors are trying to do a friends to lovers thing, they throw in like one mention of something that happened in the past that like made these people friends, and you're like, okay, but like I need to know the connection. I need to know like why they like each other. This book really does that. It lays the groundwork. As the story progresses, we start to see why these two women have been friends so long and why they might have feelings for each other that they didn't realize that they've had all along. And along the way, we're given insight into how they became friends in the first place, which I was really shocked and surprised by. I just assumed because of the way that we had been introduced to these characters, they'd been just like fast friends, but you realize that their initial friendship and initial meeting was a little rough, a little rocky. I wouldn't go so far as to say enemies to friends to lovers, but there definitely was, you know, a bit of a clashing, a bit of a butting heads personality-wise. And again, I loved seeing how they overcame those differences to become friends and stay friends this entire time. Now, this book is a little longer than I typically like to recommend for a summer romance, but it is so well done, and the relationship development is so thorough. It just felt so real to me, and at the same time, it had fanfic vibes that I personally have come to love in traditionally published romances, or in this case, like an indie romance. There is a miscommunication situation in the book that is the best kind of miscommunication situation. I feel like we need to have different names, honestly, for miscommunication, because sometimes it is so infuriating when we have people like miscommunicating and that's the reason they broke up. In this case, it's like miscommunication about like for each other, and it worked so well, and it was so fun and so tropey and so fanficky. It was a delight. It had me giggling, kick my feet, you know, the whole 9 yards. Also, it's mind-blowingly hot. I have to point that out in case you're someone who has been burned by sapphic romances in the past for not being smutty. This one will definitely get your engine revving. This is just one of those books that I don't see myself ever stopping talking about or screaming from the rooftops about. It's that good. It is that good. Next up is a book that I have loved for a few years, but I don't feel like people are still talking about it now, and I definitely haven't talked about it in a while, so I'm gonna throw it in here. Twice Shy by Sarah Hogel. This is a romance about Mabel and Wesley. Mabel is a total dreamer, and when her great aunt Violet dies and leaves her this beautiful Victorian house, she is just thinking up all of the ways in which she's going to renovate it and turn it into this like dream space. I actually think at one point she considers like turning it into a diner or something, but her plans of course are absolutely dashed when she shows up to this house and realizes that not only has she inherited claim to the house, so has Wesley, who I believe has been helping great aunt Violet with gardening and like house maintenance for a couple of years. It proves to be a bit of a tricky situation because Wesley has also been kind of thinking up things he wants to do to the house, come together and figure out exactly how they are going to renovate and get this house up and running in a way that they are both going to enjoy. Is one of the people going to sell their claim? I don't know. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've read this book, but what I can tell you is that the sort of vibe and what happens over the course of the book is them renovating, obviously, getting to know each other and kind of going from this like rivals to lover situation, or just like, I don't know why you're here, I don't really like you sort of situation, to obviously enjoying each other's company and feeling like they are the one for each other. I liked this book because, I don't know, something about like a good renovation story and two characters that don't have literally any mean bones in their bodies, just it screams summer to me. It's a perfect beach read for sure. I also really appreciate the mental health representation. It's not just a frothy read, although it mostly is. We do have a hero who does deal with anxiety, and that does come up throughout the course of the book. I'm a sucker for mental health representation in books, especially when it is for the hero. I feel like we don't see see that enough. So Twice Shy is definitely worth a read. And again, it's one of those books that, I mean, it's mainstream, it's popular, but like people aren't really talking about it. And I think a lot of you have missed out and you need to pick it up because it's definitely worth your time. I gave this one 5 stars in particular. I think actually I've given all the books on this list 5 stars, but especially this one. All right, let's get back to the gay stuff, shall we? Let's talk about a male-male romance this time, Fake Out by Aidan Finley. This book is about Maddox, who was trying to get out of a relationship with his childhood sweetheart by telling her he's gay. Now, this is not true. Maddox is not gay, or at least he doesn't believe that he has feelings for men, but he uses this again as an excuse to get out of a relationship instead of just like being honest about his feelings towards this woman. And 5 years later, this is coming back to bite him because he's invited to his ex's wedding and he needs to show up with a date who's a man, but he doesn't really know anyone who is going to like fit the bill. So I believe either his like sister or a friend sets him up with this guy named Damon. Damon is gay and he is not happy about being set up with Maddox because who the hell feels like it's appropriate to tell someone that they're gay when they're not, right? But Damon, of course, is willing to help a friend out, and Damon and Maddox do this sort of like fake dating situation, getting to know each other before this wedding that they attend, and then obviously like continuing on their friendship, tentative friendship that they end up gaining, and watching it kind of turn into something more. So this one's obviously really fun because I feel like fake dating for some reason just screams summer, especially with summer being like wedding season. Fake dating for a summer wedding, I don't know, it just feels appropriate. I also will say too, this is one of those romances that does get a little bit deep, which I think is really important given kind of the setup to the story. Maddox obviously does something kind of shitty. Damon calls him out on it. They talk about it. And of course, Damon and Maddox end up getting into a relationship. There's not any glossing over of Maddox realizing he has feelings for men. It's not this like big drawn out thing. He doesn't feel like ashamed of his feelings at all for Damon, but we don't have that sort of like I'm just gay for you trope that I feel like can be a little bit problematic in books like this. I feel like this book in general handles the harder topics very, very well. And I don't know, you've got real characters, you've got real problems, and a real romance with a lot of fun tropes thrown in. So to me, this screams summer romance. It feels like something that you need to pick up. And then last but certainly not least, I have a book that I believe Jet on TikTok would consider to be just a quintessential summer romance, Pooky. Here We Go Again by Alison Cochrane. This is a female-female, enemies to lovers road trip romance, following our main characters Logan and Rosemary. They're both high school teachers in Washington State. They are very, very different in terms of personality. Logan is a bit of a free spirit who really hasn't truly grown up yet. She doesn't really know what she wants for the future. She is living with her father, not because she doesn't have other options, but because she just like can't seem to figure out what she wants to do. And she's also hooking up with women that she really doesn't see a future with. Rosemary, on the other hand, is a really like straight-laced type A hardworking type who actually ends up getting laid off because there just isn't budget for her to teach at the high school that they teach at. So she's kind of in a tough situation. Now, both women knew each other growing up, but they had a bit of a falling out and they don't talk anymore. But they're brought together by their favorite high school teacher, Joe. Joe is dying of cancer and wants to make one last road trip across the country to his home in Maine so that he can die peacefully there and also see sights along the way. Clearly, Logan and Rosemary can't deny Joe his dying wish, but close quarters and different ideas of road trip success have these two constantly butting heads until they start bumping uglies. Honestly, this is what I personally want out of a summer romance. I know everybody's looking for something a little different for a summer read, but for me, I feel like this is the one time of year where I tend to appreciate romances that have more to them besides just the romance. Romances that tend to veer into the women's fiction side of things. Books that have a little something extra, a little bit extra emotion or hard-hitting topics. In this book, obviously, we deal with grief. We deal with rejected feelings. We deal with so many different hard-hitting topics. So this book is not just about the romance. And frankly, I don't think the romance is even the best part of this book. But again, the nature of the story and the emotions just really got to me, making this kind of the ultimate summer read. I think this is one that's going to get overlooked a lot, especially with all of the new summer releases coming out. I really actually loved Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I know that's going to be recommended a ton. I wanted to recommend you something a little bit different, which has just as much emotional resonance as something like Just for the Summer, but again, like maybe wouldn't be on the top of everyone's list. And that's kind of why I put this video together in general. I wanted to give you some recommendations that you might not just see on any list, not just new releases, things that are actually on some backlists. I think the oldest book on this list maybe got published in like 2018, so hey, it's been a few years since 2018, and maybe you didn't know about some of these books. I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below if you have read any of these books, if you are interested in reading any of these books, and also let me know what your favorite summer read is, because I'm looking to add to my TBR for the summer. But thanks so much for watching this video. I love y'all so much, and I'll see you in the next one.